Merry Christmas once again. December keeps just rolling on, and I've got more Rankin Bass to talk about. And this week I get to talk about the one that I swear had to be their first ever Christmas special. Evidently not, but it still feels like it. The Little Drummer Boy. Now, The Little Drummer Boy came out in 1968 and was not their first. It was their second stop-motion animated Christmas special right after Rudolph. And taking from what they learned on Rudolph, where you just take a classic Christmas song and expand it into a special, here they do the exact same thing with The Little Drummer Boy. And the story of The Little Drummer Boy is a fictionalized version of the Nativity story, you know, the birth of Jesus, the thing that Christmas is all about. And The Little Drummer Boy is an interesting one to talk about for two reasons. One, as a Christian, I've always had kind of a complicated relationship with The Little Drummer Boy song and The Little Drummer Boy character and story. Because it is a story not found in the Bible, The Little Drummer Boy is not a biblical character. He's not mentioned in any of the Gospels. There's no real evidence supporting that there was a little drummer boy that came to see Jesus when he was a baby in the manger. So on the one hand, growing up, I was always kind of dismissive of The Little Drummer Boy. Not that important, not biblical, so why even watch it? But as I've gotten older, I've actually come to really appreciate both the song, which I love, it's probably my favorite Christmas song right now, as well as the special for what it is. And what it is a very compelling story of what true worship is in the Christian sense. And it's the idea that no matter what you have, whether it be 2 pennies or just a drum to play on, that you can use whatever you have, as little and insignificant as it is, to worship God, and God appreciates it. So because of that, even though it's not strictly speaking a biblical story, I do still have a soft spot for it. So realizing all that, I was actually kind of excited to watch this special again because it had been a while. And watching again, well, let's just say it's probably not one of their best specials. I was actually kind of disappointed in it. Now, it's by no means one of their worst specials. They have really had some duds, especially later when they were really trying to milk this whole Christmas special thing dry. But it's not their best either. And this one, for me, is the special where I really started to notice the janky animation. And all of Rankin Bass's specials have janky animation because they were doing it on the cheap. And for a lot of them, that's kind of the charm, because even though they don't move realistically, they still move with a lot of personality. Here, because it is such a grounded story, they're in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, and they're in the desert, and it's the 1st century AD, you know, Jesus being born, and all the characters are either real biblical people like Mary, Joseph, and the 3 kings, or they're fictional people like the Little Drummer Boy himself or the people he travels with, but they're still supposed to go off this somewhat realistic historical vibe that really doesn't lend itself to stop motion, like how Christmas elves lend themselves to stop motion, or Santa Claus, or reindeer. Putting it in that more realistic setting really starts to show the flaws and imperfections in the animation, as well as the set dressing and the backgrounds and stuff. It all just starts to look a lot cheaper, but all that I can kind of look past, just like how I look past it in Rudolph if there's a lot of characters with personality and likable charm and, you know, people you can get behind. And this special really kind of doesn't have that either. The closest thing to a sympathetic protagonist we have is the Little Drummer Boy himself. And before I really talk about him, the first thing I have to say is that this story is a lot darker than I think a lot of people remember. There is kind of a melancholy and bitter overtone throughout this whole thing, and it's mostly because of the incredibly sad and tragic backstory that they give the Little Drummer Boy in this movie. And it's that the Little Drummer Boy's name is Aaron. He's this little Jewish kid, and he had a family. He had a mom and a dad. They were farmers. They weren't rich, but he had this drum. It was his most prized possession, and it could make the animals dance. But then one day bandits came and they burned down the whole farm, and both parents died, and now Aaron's just an orphan, and he's all alone wandering the desert with his camel, his donkey, and his little lamb that all dance to his music. Because of this incredibly traumatic experience, he just hates people, and the special makes a big deal about this. Aaron hates humans. He loves animals, can't stand humans because of what they did to his family. So right away you get that Aaron is not the kind of happy-go-lucky little boy that you might think about when you think of a Little Drummer Boy. No, this is a pretty bitter, angry, resentful kid. And when he falls in with the likes of Ben Haramed and Ali, these desert showmen that just kind of kidnap him and his animals and exploit him for his drumming ability. It's around here where you find out that Ben Haramed and Ali are not the most reputable people. They're kind of sleazy, and they actually do remind me a lot of Honest John and Gideon from Pinocchio. That doesn't really help fix Aaron's prejudice against humans, because again, they're just like the worst people. And after Aaron puts on a show that is admittedly pretty entertaining, it's probably the best animated sequence in the movie, only because of how they animate the animals during this one song, Why Can't the Animals Smile? And it's a pretty simple song about various animals not being able to smile, but there's only 3 animals that Aaron has with him. But the way they animate the camel to move like a spider or the sheep to move like a frog, it actually is pretty convincing and really funny to see these animals move in such creative ways. But this quickly ends when Aaron blows up at everybody for laughing at him and he runs off to be with himself. But he doesn't really get very far, because as he's leaving and Ben Haramed and Ali are chasing him, they come across these tents set up just outside the city, and it's the 3 kings that brought gifts to the baby Jesus. Even though biblically speaking we don't really know how many magi or wise men actually came to see Jesus, and they definitely didn't see him when he was a baby. They saw him when he was 2, maybe 3 years old. But nevertheless, tradition has always had 3, and they even have names: Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. And I guess these names have been in nativity tradition for centuries, and I couldn't really find out where they originally came from or how these kings were given these names. But feel free to drop in the comments if you know where this tradition started and where these names came from. But something I did find out is where these kings were supposedly coming from. And traditionally, Caspar came from India, Melchior came from Persia, and Balthazar either came from Ethiopia or Arabia. It's a little kind of depends on who you ask. But this movie, even though it does go the extra step to give them names, and they are Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar, the ethnicities that they associate with these names are 100% wrong. First of all, Balthazar, who should be very dark-skinned if he's from Ethiopia, they made him Chinese. And Gaspar, who should be Indian, they gave him incredibly dark skin. And Melchior, the Persian, just looks kind of like a ginger Santa Claus. So I have no idea what they were going for here. They come in the picture because one of their camels got overloaded with baggage, so they need a new camel, and Ben Haramed sells them the Little Drummer Boy's camel, which he's none too thrilled about. But the 3 kings think nothing of it, and they go off to follow their star. But obviously the Little Drummer Boy wants his camel back, so he follows them all the way to Bethlehem, where they end up, and you get the big nativity scene. And it's the big climactic moment of the movie where Jesus is born. You have all the shepherds there, you have the 3 kings there. It's this beautiful little stop motion nativity set, and again, it's probably not the most biblically accurate nativity set, but you know, going off of traditional Christmas nativity sets, it's about what you would expect. And so we're thinking, okay, the movie's about to wrap up, the Little Drummer Boy's gonna play his little song in front of Jesus, and that'll restore his faith in humanity, it'll be a happy ending, the end. Nah, keeping in with the mean-spirited and kind of melancholy tone of this special, as they're running through the streets of Bethlehem trying to find the kings, the lamb gets hit by a cart and dies. But in an act of faith, the Little Drummer Boy brings it before the baby Jesus, and that's where he plays his little song in an act of worship. And this is the part where the special really starts to work for me. It's these last like 5 minutes that is just straight from the Little Drummer Boy's song, where he plays his song, he worships the baby Jesus smiles at him, and he gets his faith renewed in humanity. And because he had such faith, the lamb is healed and restored, and it's a happy ending. That's about it for the Little Drummer Boy. It's a really short special. It's only about 20-25 minutes long, about half the length of Rudolph. I really think it's a shame that it's so short, because I feel like if Rudolph was, you know, about an hour long, I feel like this movie would have benefited from more runtime, a bit bigger budget, and just a little bit more time to flesh out the character of the Little Drummer Boy, his relationship with the animals, his backstory, because as it is, it all goes by really fast, and you don't really have any moments where you sympathize with the Little Drummer Boy, because until he actually comes and worships Jesus, he is incredibly unlikable. He's just so bitter throughout the entire movie, and where you can kind of understand, given his traumatic backstory, why he's so bitter and angry all the time, and also given the humans that he's come across. I do think there is such a missed opportunity in exploring the Little Drummer Boy's personality. And even when he does meet the kings, he does have a few conversations with them, but they're very brief. If you could expand that, have him stay the night with one of the kings, really develop a rapport with them, maybe understand why the birth of Jesus is so significant, I think the movie would benefit tremendously. But as is, it's not horrible, it's fine, if not a little mean-spirited in some parts. You can show it to your kids. It's a decent enough introduction to the whole nativity scene if you want to teach your kids about the birth of Jesus. This is not a horrible way to get that started, but I will say it does lack some of the creativity and personality that some of these other specials have to a much greater degree. But now I'll turn it over to you guys. What do you think about the Little Drummer Boy? Do you watch it every year? Is it a Christmas classic in your house? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. As always, I'm Colby. This is my Nerdy Talk, and I'll see you in the next video.